Welcome. Welcome to the second day of the Agri4D conference. So this is the 7th Agri4D conference. The first one was held in 2012, and since then it has been held every 2 years to discuss issues around food systems. And this year's conference is no different. Do you remember the theme for this year's conference? No worries, I'll remind you. It is building resilient food systems in uncertain times. My name is Bridget Walia. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Zambia and also a fellow of the Food Systems Research Network. I'm very happy and honored to be the main moderator for this year's conference. With me are my two co-moderators, Elaine and Matthew. Please introduce yourselves.
Thank you so much, Bridget. Hi, good morning to you all. I am Aileen Torres Morales, and I am a research associate at the Stockholm Environment Institute. I am quite interested in the intersection between energy systems and agricultural systems.
And I'm Matthew Kessler, a science communicator and food systems podcaster from Table, a collaboration between 3 universities that explores the evidence and values behind global food system debates. I'm based here in Uppsala at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. We are the co-moderators for this conference, and our task today is to make sure we have a smooth connection between you, the online audience, and us, the live studio. Before we hear our first keynote speakers, some quick housekeeping. If you're having any trouble with the platform, please click the support button. We're here to help you. You can chat with your fellow conference goers and also ask keynotes and panelist questions. Just use the Q&A function on the right side of the platform to ask questions during these sessions, and you can upvote the questions you like. Please take advantage of these interactive platforms. And we'd also like to remind you to use the hashtag Agri4D on social media. Over to you, Bridget.
Thank you. So hashtag Agri4D. Each day, we'll be giving the platform to keynote speakers. So these are policymakers, practitioners, and researchers that are working on issues around global food systems. So for today, we're going to start with 2 keynotes, and please remember that after they've given their presentations, you can ask questions in the Q&A, and you can actually start to send the questions while they're talking, and our co-moderators will help us bring the questions to them. So for today, we'll start with Betty Kibaara, who is the director of the Food Initiative at the Rockefeller Foundation, based in Kenya at their Africa Regional Office. So Betty works on transforming food systems. She has several initiatives around that, and today she's going to talk to us about some of them. And for example, she works on fast fertilizer. If you don't know what fast fertilizer is, no worries, she'll explain to us. But some of it involves using insects to make sustainable fertilizers. And she also does work on nutritional issues. So we'll hear more from this. Thank you and welcome, Betty.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, and greetings from Nairobi. Okay, so thank you so much for inviting me to this session today to speak about food, and specifically I'll be talking about nutritious and sustainable food systems and looking at solutions from within, and you'll understand why I'm calling these solutions from within. And I want to start by saying that the food system is unhealthy, is unsustainable, is inequitable, and it also creates a lot of costs, more cost than economic value. You know, if you look at countries like in some countries in Africa, like Burundi, malnutrition levels are still very high, about 58%. And we also know that over the past, 50 years, we have seen a lot of positive change in productivity increase in Africa. But at the same time, when we see these changes, we have seen that we have prioritized yield and calories, and we have also created, a global market food system which is worth about $9 trillion. But that same system is also generating a lot of negative health, environmental, and inequity problems. And most recent study which was done, the true cost accounting of food, it takes the food system estimated to be about $19.8 trillion of negativity in terms of health and environment. So why am I focusing on solution from within? if we would really want to improve our nutrition, our food systems in Africa, we need to focus on where we're already having a lot of calories coming from. And grains actually represent 50% of the calories and 40% of the proteins. But refined grains, and here where I'm talking about wheat, I'm talking about rice, I'm talking about maize, actually dominate the grain consumption in Africa. And this makes the diet actually less nutritious. And we have also seen a lot of increase in terms of non-communicable diseases such as diabetes and cancers. When I was growing up in the village, I remember my mother sending me to the hammer mill to go and grind a few kilograms of flour, and we consumed good food, and it was whole grain. But we had one challenge. The challenge was rancidity and oxidation, because the whole grain doesn't store for long. So when businesses started commercializing the flour, they did not know what to do to extend the shelf life from 3 weeks. Anyone who wants to be in business, you want to make sure that the flour lasts for a longer time. And in that case, they started refining and stripping the grain of its bran and the germ, which is the more nutritious components of the grain. And they left us with endosperm, which is, it's good. It's high in carbohydrates, but it's less nutritious. But today we have technologies that extend the shelf life for fortified whole grain. We have worked with some universities in the US and in South Africa to extend the shelf life for the whole grain from 3 weeks to 6 months. And there are many benefits of fortified whole grain. It's actually 5 times more nutritious than refined grain. And we have done a lot of analysis that we have shown that it's budget neutral, and it costs about the same. And when in Africa, where you're dealing with cases where governments don't have a lot of funding, especially for the school feeding programs, when you tell someone, I can make a product that is budget neutral, you get more nutritious meals at the same cost, then it makes a lot of sense. And we know fortification also increases, the vitamins and minerals which are found in the, in addition to the whole grain. So why is it important to the Rockefeller Foundation? We have an initiative we call the Good Food Initiative, and where we are focusing on the school feeding programs. We want to transition kids to more healthier diets, and of course, with time, we want to also do it to the people that we serve and the consumers. And why are school feeding very important to us? It's an important entry point for us. 418 million children right now are being fed on school feeding programs, which is an increase from about 388 million before COVID. And we are also seeing that the political economy of school meals, it's really grown. We are talking about a $48 billion business today. So the Rockefeller Foundation, in a nutshell, we have supported transitioning of consumption from the highly refined grains to the fortified whole grain. We now have more than 200 learners who in Burundi, in Rwanda, and in Kenya who are now accessing the fortified whole grain, which is more nutritious. And we're also trying, and we have piloted a lot of work around maize and millet blend, because we have also forgotten some of our traditional grains like millet and sorghum, but we are trying to bring them back to the food system. And one of the things maybe you may ask then, what is the cost of transitioning to whole grain? What does it take? We have done, it takes a lot of social behavior change campaigns. The taste is a bit different. Cooking skills is also requires, it's somehow a little bit different. So a lot of social behavior change campaign, technical assistance, and innovative financing. For example, the Rockefeller Foundation, we have set up what we call the Good Food Innovation Fund. And this is a $5 million pocket of fund where we give between $50,000 and $200,000 as returnable grants for anyone who wants, any company that wants to transition to fortified whole grain. It's payable between 3 and 5 years. It also requires new equipment. In some countries, of course, new standards. For example, when we are, working in different countries, and we are seeing this as another product, so a lot of, approvals and food safety by the government. And then it also requires a lot of partnerships, and we have set up what we're calling the Fortified Whole Grain Alliance. And the Fortified Whole Grain Alliance is the partnership of many partners who are trying to change and help us to move to fortified whole grain. As I finish, I thought I wanted to share with you just a couple of slides that shows what I'm talking about. Can you see my screen, moderator? Hello? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, I want to make sure that before I finish, I want to make sure that everyone understands what I'm talking about. So on the left is, for example, maize whole grain, maize grain as God made it. And when you go for whole grain, you just grind the flour as it is. So you have 100% recovery, and you have both the bran and the germ and the endosperm. But what the current businesses are doing, we are on the lower part where we do, highly processing. So 70% of the grain is what we recover from the 100 kilos, and 30% actually is food which I call like the missing food. Fine, someone will say it goes to the animals, and animals are part of the food system, but this is food which can also go to human beings. We know there are so many other sources of animal feed ingredients, like the insects and cottonseed cake and all that. So here we are also addressing issues of hidden food loss, which you don't see and you don't hear it talked about so much in the system. That's just a picture of, that was me in Benin some 2 months ago. And this is also another case of where we really highly process our food. On the left is brown rice or unpolished rice. And then once once it's highly polished and processed, the middle piece is what I'm calling the bran and the germ. This is what goes towards feeding the livestock. And to the right, then we get white. But we have been conditioning to eat the white, what is on the right, because white looks good. But we need to now think about how do we go back to consuming grain the way God made it and stop losing all this food. And that's just an example of where we have done the shift. In Rwanda, that was our first country, and now we are expanding to other 5 countries. And you can see grain is the biggest component of the school feeding programs. You can see that plate there has beans. But on the right, you can see we're also adding some of those micro and micronutrients, which are also helping the children to live better, healthier lives. And you can see it's actually 5 times more nutritious. And when we did the pilot in Rwanda, we started with 13,000 kids. Now they're about 74,000, and we are soon heading to 1 million or so children or more. But I think I wanted to point out two things. So when we did our assessment, 73% of the children, actually, they are now more aware because we've done a lot of social behavior change campaigns. They are more aware of the nutrition benefits of fortified whole grain. We also piloted a lot. We got feedback from the 6th graders, and 97% of the children actually prefer the whole grain. And I think the final one, as I finish, is that it is not just about the school. Our goal is to also influence the consumers. And when we started this work in Rwanda, the parents then started coming and asking us, this fortified whole grain, it seems like it's very, very nutritious. Where can we get it from the market? And we are now seeing, a lot of, private sector companies coming in to say they want to start this work and create a new product. In Kenya, we have Capwell that already has a product in the market. And that's also what I was also talking about. The Fortified Whole Grain Alliance is now a full alliance with different partners, including WFP and GAIN and all the others which are listed there. So we welcome any partner who wants to reach out to us to be part of the Fortified Whole Grain Alliance. And we really want to make create a movement where we also appreciate our local foods.
Okay.
I think I don't have more time, but I think I've said what I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Betty, for that very interesting discussion. And I think as a consumer, I'm touched. I grew up eating, I'm from Zambia, and we've made eating maize, refined maize, into an art form. And I deliberately choose the refined, despite knowing the science. So I think I really resonate with what you say about the need for behavior change. And we'll come back to you. So for now, we continue talking to civil society, and we invite Seema Kulkarni, who is one of the founding members for the Society for Promoting Participating Ecosystem Management and a member of the National Facilitation Team of the Forum for Women Farmers' Rights. Seema has over 30 years experience working on issues such as gender and natural resources. Welcome, Seema. Please go ahead. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And what an inspiring talk from Betty. So I'm going to take you to India. I hope I can be heard. Is that fine?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So let me share my screen right away and take you to a state in India where we're working with women farmers to actually lead and find the way. So this is a context where there are a large number of farmer suicides and multiple stories of women being held responsible for the stigma committed by their farmer husbands. So these are the stories of so many women farmers who are left behind because their husbands have committed suicide. So the story really starts from whether women are recognized as farmers or not, and then the kind of potential change that they have brought about. But let's just quickly look at this story of a woman who belongs to a farmer suicide household. The story, she speaks in Marathi, so please, it's okay if the sound is not very good, but yeah. So this is a woman farmer. त्यासाठी So, I mean, Ranjana's story is the story of so many other women farmers who are, located in this part of Maharashtra, a Western Indian state, where there are a large number of farmer suicides because of agrarian distress and for multiple reasons. But there is, the agrarian distress and the reasons for this agrarian distress are hardly spoken about, but even less is the story of the women farmers who are left behind. And that is the work that, we have started, where we are confronted with the situation, the agrarian paradigm, where monocropping, BT cotton, GM, and soybean have become the major crops. And water has been reallocated from, food crops to commercial water intensive crops and to industries. So we are already seeing that food crops, nutritious food crops, have been replaced by these monocrops, cotton and soybean, in a majority of this part. What we're seeing from the data, and the figures are very stark, is that absolute area under food cultivation has gone down in much of the state. And obviously we have lost on diversity of foods, diversity of seed varieties, and if we look at the data on health, we're also seeing malnutrition and anemia, which is on the rise. And we know that the agrarian crisis is a gendered one. The story of Ranjana is, as I said, the story of many, where we're clearly seeing that women are putting more
effort and more labor into agriculture, but the paid work opportunities are rapidly declining. Women don't have assets in their name, and there is a lot of stigma that is attached to them. So this is the kind of a crisis, a scenario that where we sought for answers, which on the one hand were looking at questioning the entire agrarian paradigm, but also what could change it, and what would be the role of women farmers in this. So we are seeing here the unpaid labor, agriculture, in daily wage work, and this had to be contested, this had to be addressed with low asset base, as I said. So what was that initiative? And this initiative came, in fact, we used the pandemic as an opportunity to bring up these discussions on we have land, or we belong to land owning families, but we have no food to eat during the pandemic. And the pandemic was, in fact, we had severe lockdowns here, and food itself was not moving from place to place. And that is when we started having digital conversations, telephonic conversations with women, especially the small and marginal households, where women were, asking these questions that why is it that we are not able to grow food? We grow cotton, we grow soybean, but can we eat it? And that is where the challenge to the mainstream agriculture paradigm also started, being formulated. And women took a stand that we will make this transition gradually, but we will make the transition for sure. And they said no to chemical farming, no to monocropping, and no to GM and high yielding and hybrid varieties. So what was that farming model, which in a way brought many of the conversations that we had with them, that there would be food on their plate, there would be non-poisonous food on their plate, and there would be nutrition. So this was these were some of the broad principles on which our farming model, which we call as the self-reliant farming model, which combines in a way your cash requirements, but also ensures that you will have food and nutrition on your table. And this was no use of chemical fertilizers, weedicides, pesticides, everything that comes from the multinationals and the large corporate industry, which is actually creating dependence on the poor towards markets and commercialization. Planting local varieties of mixed crops, local production of chemical-free fertilizers. So how can we take control over all the inputs that go into agriculture? And these were some of the key principles that we started out with. The little diagram there shows you, the diversity of crops and the mixed cropping that was introduced as part of this farming model. From here, you also see that there is diversity in terms of the kind of seed. I mean, initially when we were speaking to the women, it was just one or two crops. But if you look at this, there are 15 different crops, apart from a number of vegetable crops and various other crops that were also taken up by women. So suddenly the basket had become very diverse, from just one or two to 25. And that already spoke a lot about what was going to be available to them in terms of food and nutrition. And of course, there were constraints. There were constraints because not just that they were poor farmers, but because they were women farmers. And constraints were from non-availability of resource inputs, but also just simply because they are single, or they belong to a particular caste, or belong to a particular ethnic minority. And therefore, if women are taking up a new initiative to challenge, on the one hand, the agrarian paradigm, but also challenging patriarchy, caste. So they are taking on structural inequalities as well. And that is where women farmers were also facing a lot of constraints, and they had to fight against these adversities. We had women coming and telling us, oh, we are not able to hire labor for this kind of agriculture. Or they're coming and telling us that, men come and make fun of us because they say, oh, what is this diverse agriculture? It's not going to get you anywhere. So these kind of non-cooperation, hitting back at women, backlash, was also part of our constraints. But yet women stood up. although it's a small number today, I think the movement is spreading, and we have formed a very strong collective of women farmers for food and nutrition security. There's no hierarchy where somebody comes and trains you, but there is capacity building, and I myself can say that I have learned so much from these women in terms of where to find the traditional varieties, what kind of cropping practices, and this diverse set of practices has also been extremely empowering. So they are their own, in a way, masters, and no longer dependent on the large industry which is promoting a certain kind of model. They're doing their own research and documentation. So they have their little diaries where they take pictures, they draw maps of their farms, what is changing, what is not, what are the markers of environment. So do we see new birds, do we see new kinds of pests, how do we deal with it? So there's research is not just for academia, but research is also something that we can do. So in a way, even challenging where knowledge is and who holds knowledge, and who teaches. So these are all the different bioresource inputs, and they're building their own seed banks now. We've also introduced, because agroecology-based agriculture is talking about no to fossil fuels in a very strong way. So we don't want those large diesel tanks and diesel tractors and diesel equipment or electric equipment to come there. But what are these small handhold equipment which do not increase the drudgery of women at land, but also are ecologically sound, are careful about the microorganisms, and are able to heal the earth and also make it more productive. So a number of innovative practices, because we are in an area which is close to forests. There is climate change, and therefore there is a lot of animal or crop raiding that we are seeing. So women are innovating, finding their own ways to deal with this. I would say interactions with groups like ours, with also scientists who come from mainstream paradigms but are willing to now learn. So agriculture universities are also coming to us. And this is the basket, just to end this presentation, it's been a wonderful journey for us, where we've seen women lead was entirely dependent on the large corporates or on traders, where we would constantly borrow and be in locked into agreements that we take credit from them and sell our produce to them at lower prices. But now we have, we are in a different kind of a scenario where not only we are able to eat what we produce, but we also are no longer dependent on the seed, on various other resource inputs. Women have come up with stories of how, how you basically measure the cost benefit in terms of this was the yield, that was not the yield, but it's also more about how happy we are and how engaged we are with various other groups in the villages. So this is the diversity of seed, diversity of the produce, the local markets that have been generated. And the strongest part of this sentence has been that while food and delicious, diverse food has come to their tables, they've also created a strong bonding. And this collective effort is what is actually going to help them transform systems. So it's not just about how it has transformed their way, transformed the way in which they now look at their own lives, but community. And this is our last slide about the diversity of seed, the local seed banks that these women's collectives. So I'm going to stop the share, and I hope I have been on time. I'm sorry if I have taken up any time, but I'm happy to take on any questions if there are. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to both presenters. So we have questions for you. We'll start with Betty. Betty, you talked about change in behavior. Like we need to change our behavior so that we shift to consuming fortified whole grains. But what has been your experience in achieving this? Because like for me, as I said, it's very easy for me to find the refined grain. I just go to the nearest, the refined grain. I just go to the nearest supermarket and I find it. Whereas if I want to find the whole food, then I have to go looking somewhere far. So it's not easy, and I assume this is deliberate, that it's easier to find the bad food. So in terms of behavior change, what do you think we can do about it?
Yeah, so I want to combine your question with another one from Lisa, which is online. She's also asking about acceptability and taste and the texture and all that. So what I can say is that our own experience is that, first when we were designing one of the program for the school feeding, and we were promoting the white flour, and the feedback we got was for the porridge, it did not look so healthy for the parents because they're used to brown porridge. And that's why we ended up mixing the white and 90% white and 10% millet. So a lot of feedback mechanism. And then in other places, for example, in Rwanda, we have done quite a lot in terms of cooking demos. We have also trained the cooks. We have cooking manuals. And we also think that the government has a role to play in terms of helping us to increase access for the fortified whole grain. For example, the Kenyan government is developing policies for fortified whole grain flour blending in Kenya. But then, just directly to answer your question, it's not easy to transition people who are used to eating the whiter, the better. But I think with time, I think people are recognizing that we have a medical challenge. Every other time you hear someone, has cancer or diabetes, some of this, I'm not saying it's the only thing, but whole grain contributes to a bigger percentage. So we have to be very intentional, and sessions like these are good where we raise awareness, and we hope we can convert you. But the other thing is that the school feeding programs, it's very easy. Once you give children food, they really even have so much choice. They don't even have anything to eat. And so the thing is, we want to make sure that we can also build and cultivate that culture of wanting to eat whole grain from when they were young. And by the time they grow older, they're going to be able to continue consuming. But at the same time, that's why we have the Fortified Whole Grain Alliance, where we are going to be doing more social behavior change campaigns.
All right, thank you. And Seema, coming to you, you did mention that the diversity of food has reduced, and partly I assume this comes from the monocropping that is being promoted. So in your program, what initiatives do you have to speak to this, where the women farmers themselves can maybe exchange seeds or have access to seeds that is more agroecologically suited? Is there anything you're doing about this? Just speak to us about that.
Thanks. In fact, the entire program is very much about that. And in fact, the diversity of seed, that itself was a very interesting exercise for us because, we had the women farmers speak to the village elders and just talk about, the different seeds that were available, let's say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but have completely been erased both from the farms, but also from the minds of people. And to gather the seed and to gather information about their cultivation practices has been a very, very important program for us. And all of these women across, a large part of the state where we're working have been not only gathering this information, but have also started growing these varieties of seed. And as I showed you in some of the slides, this diversity has not only improved soil health, ecological health, but has also, women are very explicitly talking about how that has meant less visits to the doctor, or that has meant happiness in terms of what I can share with my friends and neighbors. Earlier I had only cotton and I was locked in trade with a trader or with the market where I only had to sell cotton at a price that was demanded. But today I can, bring in that happiness to my family, my neighbors, my friends, and also have some income from it. So I think, this shift in the way women are looking at farming and agriculture has been extremely empowering in itself. And so there is a lot of effort, as I showed you, from just one or two crops to 35 different crops on that small plot of land is a huge transition, I would say, in the 3 or 4 years of intensive work.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And then we have a question. Someone is asking about how can we decrease the suicide rates, the farmer suicide rates, because from your explanation, this is driven by sort of feeling helpless because maybe they can't access seeds, they don't get good yields, and they just feel overwhelmed. So is there anything that policymakers or civil society can do about this to deal with that problem as the root cause?
Yes, that's a very important question, and thanks for that. I think that's the moot question, that what causes these suicides. So I think there are multiple reasons, and there certainly is a policy context to that, because why is it that it comes from some regions? How is it connected to certain crops? Because a large number of suicides have been seen among cotton growing farmers. And this is the cotton where, we have an entire encroachment, I would say, from the whole GM industry, where, the costs of cultivation have been going very high. Markets are very volatile. So the prices are not in the hands of the farmers on the one hand, and the costs of cultivation are really rising very, very rapidly. So farmers are caught in a debt. It's a spiral of debts in a way. And for you and me, this is, you would say, oh, it's only that much. But for a farmer coming from a small and marginal household, that's a huge amount. And if you're caught in that spiral of debt, coming out of it is not very easy unless there is a strong political will to do so. And we have been constantly doing policy dialogues with governments to say that, there has to be a farmer-sensitive policy, particularly in the light of climate change and, the overt market dependence that we are seeing. And this policy shift clearly needs to support farmers. It needs to give them a remunerative and guaranteed price, a policy that we don't have in India except for one or two crops that favor the political class. So it is very important that we have a remunerative, guaranteed price. So no matter what happens, the farmer must get this price for the produce that he or she has been growing. But most importantly, I think there is a need for ensuring social security to the farmer community. And that, again, is not part of the policy framework in our country. So unfortunately, the costs that farmers incur on healthcare, on social services are so high that, the meager income that they get from their agriculture is barely able to meet even those. So you can imagine that, what gets plowed back into agriculture is, again, a dependence on a new loan, on new credit, which again pulls them into a spiral of debt. So policy commitment is, what is important, and we are working towards that.
Okay, thank you for that. So you've both shared very exciting examples of interventions that you're doing in your workspace. So I'm just wondering now, is it possible to scale these up to national level or to regional level? What would you like to see maybe done by policymakers or researchers to do this? Because definitely we need to replicate these success stories. Starting with Betty.
Yeah, so we don't want to remain in successful pilots, and that's why the foundation is working in 7 countries. We are working in India, in Honduras, in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Benin, and other Eastern African countries. Our entry point is to work very closely with government. We're also working with WFP. As you know, WFP is one of the largest, supporters of school feeding programs. So country like Benin have put in like $270 million for the next 5 years to support school feeding. So what we are doing, I think where the biggest bottleneck is not even with government. For example, the governments of Kenya, the government of Burundi, they are totally committed to fortified whole grain. Where we have a challenge is with the capacity for the private sector partners to make that shift and transition. And it's happening slowly. And our goal is to reach 500 million children. So we don't want to just focus on the successful pilot, but I think I've talked about the government and also the private sector, and that's why we have set up the Fortified Whole Grain Alliance to support the process.
Thank you. Seema?
Yeah.
So I think successful pilots have shown the way, and there are multiple such little oases, I would say, in the country, which is important. But I think we need to work at multiple levels, and one is, of course, engagement with the state. That's the governments. So partnerships are going to be critical, where we will have policy sort of demands that we will make. But I think what we are, from the point of view of scaling up, it also has to be a bottom-up approach, and we've been convinced about that approach through our 3-4 decades of work, where we clearly see that the kind of collectivization that I mentioned to you, we're fortunate that we've over the last decade or so been able to build a women farmers forum, which is a national network now in India, of which I'm also a part of, and our organization is also constantly connected with this network. Mm-hmm. And it is through this Forum for Women Farmers' Rights, which is MAKAAM, that we are taking this issue to a larger level. So while there is, a policy engagement, there is a demonstration that is happening at the field level. The third level that we think is important is this bottoms-up kind of mobilization and actions that are required that call for transformative change. So we are not only talking about what needs to change in agriculture, but what needs to change in the way we understand food, in the way we understand our commercialization of food and corporatization. So also, articulating demands through different social carriers or agencies, as we may like to call them. So I would say that we are trying to make this effort with a multi-scalar approach, engagement with multiple sets of people and groups.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you very much to both for this wonderful discussion. And we definitely hope that Agri4D conference is one such platform where we can scale up these ideas. So hashtag whole grains, hashtag empowered women. Have a good day. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm sure we've learned a lot from that. And I'll hand you over to Matthew and Elaine for now. See you later.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Seema. And thank you so much, Betty, for these insightful lectures. These keynotes were very, very nice to hear and see some examples from how the empowerment of women and also the empowerment of whole foods can be made. So thank you so much. And we will now start to move slowly into a break. But before moving to the break, we would like to spend some minutes to introduce a few activities we have prepared today for you, our online audience. So we invite you to participate in. Can you tell us a bit more about this, Matthew, please?
Sure, and it relates also to the two keynotes, one kind of focusing more on the production side and one more on the consumption side. And so we have a tricky question for you, which is, food systems are responsible for what % of global biodiversity loss? So we ask you not to Google this answer. You can find a link to answer this quiz with the QR code that you could see on the screen. We'll leave it up there for a little while. And there's also a link that you can find on the landing page. So if you click on the home page and then you scroll down a little bit, you'll find a link to the Mentimeter question.
Yes, so I hope you can have some seconds to scan the code, to enter the Menti and answer this question. And while you scan the code and enter the code, we would also like to remind you that each of the conference days we are having a quiz. So for today, our quiz will be also focusing on food waste. Remember that if you answer to the quiz of the day, then you will have the chance to win a nice gift from Sweden. To answer this quiz, we invite you to go to our platform in bio. Then in the left-hand side of the platform, there is a menu. And if you go from the bottom to the top, the second after the last one, it's chats. There you can find the question for the day number 2, so you can answer there. So after this explanation, the question for today is, what is your best tip to reduce food waste from your household? We will be taking a look into your answers. We know that a few of you have already been answering this question, so thank you for that, but you have the chance to do it through the day. And Matthew and I will be selecting the winner question, so please stay tuned for that during the wrap-up. And in addition to these two activities, the Menti and the quiz of the day, we would really like to invite you to share the knowledge that you are gaining and the reflections you are gaining from this conference. Please use the hashtag Agri4D. You can see it here, I hope. So hashtag Agri4D, both in, well, what it's now X, that was Twitter before, and if you are feeling like also sharing some things in LinkedIn, please do so using our hashtag.
Great, Eileen. And I also really like this quiz question because it is something that we could practically apply ourselves. So I'm very curious to see all the answers that end up today. And you will find out what our favorite answer was later in a wrap-up session at 3 o'clock. And now it is time for our short break. So we're going to take a 15-minute break, and then after the break, we'll learn more from our panel sessions. So those are on robust food supply chains, agri-food innovation, agroforestry from Asia to Africa, and indigenous knowledge production in food systems. You'll find links to the parallel sessions on the program page. And now enjoy your break.